welcome to Daily Debrief brought to you by People's Dispatch. I'm Shreya and today's episode we'll be talking about the latest from Yemen, the shutdown of the Nordstream 1 pipeline, and a no confidence vote in France. Our first story is from Yemen. In a major violation of the UN-sponsored ceasefire, at least 17 people were killed and scores of others injured after Saudi Arabia's border guards opened fire across the border in Yemen's Sa'ada province on Sunday. Sada is at the extreme northwest of the country, sharing a long land border with Saudi Arabia. It is also the place of the origin of the Houthi movement, officially known as Ansar Allah. The ceasefire in the country has been on since April and has led to a decrease in violence in the country, which has been on since 2015. We have with us Abdul from People's Dispatch to talk about this. So, Abdul, can you tell us the details of the Sunday event and what's really happening in Yemen right now?
Well, Sunday being also one of the festivals in the region, there was some kind of skirmish on the border with a long border between Yemen and Saudi Arabia. And since, as you rightly pointed out, this is the hub of Houthi movement, this is a sensitive region, of course. Though, despite the fact that there is a ceasefire which is going on since last almost 4 months, 3.5 months now, there are small incidents of violence here and there reported. But being this sensitive region on that particular festival day, though we have no idea what exactly happened, but there was a firing by the border guards, Saudi border guards, which led to the killing of 17 people. Scores of others were also injured, which were transferred to the nearby city where there are health facilities available. You know that the health facilities, the health infrastructure in Yemen is in a very bad condition, primarily because of the war which is going on for the last 7.5 years. And this incident in particular has been largely ignored by the regional and the Western media, which shows how insensitive the media is towards this particular reason. The people of Yemen, which are suffering from war and the war-related issues, particularly the starvation, which is created because of the Saudi blockade on the region. That blockade has been, in fact, more deadly for the people, more harmful for the people than the actual war, which has created starvation, lack of medical facilities and other things for the millions of Yemenis. And this, the incident is basically proves that there is a need for the complete cessation of all kind of hostilities. There is a need of peace in the region.
So, Abdul, you mentioned the ceasefire also. What's been the progress on the ceasefire and how does this event affect it? And do you think the ceasefire will lead to a sort of a permanent peace? Is this the way?
As the way things are going at this moment, it is very difficult to say which way the final result will be. Most likely, both the parties, of course, they are exhausted. Given the fact that as we were talking about, the people of Yemen are also not in a very there is no enthusiasm for war at this moment. Of course, everyone wants peace. Even the Saudis, which usually for a very long time were hostile towards all the elements who resisted against their aggression, are ready to kind of talk about peace and all. Biden's visit, forthcoming visit, he is going to be in Saudi Arabia on Friday, may also kind of help the peace process in the region. But these violations, and these are not only violations which is happening once in a while. This is if you read the local media, particularly the media which is based in the Sana'a and other parts of the Yemen, of northwestern Yemen, you will find that there are hundreds of violations of ceasefire every day going on. Those are still dismissed as minor violations, but the incident on Sunday in which 17 people were killed, the incidents we are talking about, apart from that, there are other systematic issues which need to be resolved before any talk of peace is possible. Primarily the blockade of Yemen, which Houthis have pointed out again and again, repeatedly. There is a air blockade, there is a sea blockade, there is a land blockade in the name of preventing weapons reaching to Houthi-controlled regions. Saudi Arabia has imposed that blockade, which also prevents the flow of aid, the flow of necessary essential goods like food, medical supplies, and other things, energy-related products. All of them are blocked because of the this blockade imposed by Saudi Arabia and its allies on this. Houthis have said until this blockade is completely lifted, there cannot be any possibility of peace. So the UN and whichever agencies are responsible for peace needs to take this issue more seriously. Apart from that, there are other objections raised by Houthis and other people in Yemen. And one of that is the loot, systematic loot of Yemeni's resources. So Yemeni oil is exploited by Saudi Arabia and UAE. The Socotra Island and the smaller islands around it is basically used by UAE and Saudi allies to basically to create military bases and all. These are symptoms of permanent occupation of Yemen. Until these issues which are raised by Yemenis are resolved, the peace at this moment, just to make it simple, the cessation of hostilities, the lifting of blockade, and prevention of the loot of the Yemeni resources. Until these three issues are addressed, peace is a remote possibility at this moment.
Thank you so much, Abdul, for being with us on the show today. Our next story is from the energy front lines of the Russia-Ukraine war. The Nordstream 1 pipeline linking Russia and Germany has been shut for 10 days for annual maintenance. This comes amid an energy war which comes from sanctions imposed by NATO and EU countries on Russia. Russia had cut down supplies due to an issue with a turbine whose delivery got stuck due to sanctions. We have with us NewsClick's Prabir Purkayastha for more. So Prabir, can you tell us about what is this Nord Stream 1 pipeline and what is going to be the impact of shutting it down?
Well, first is the Nord Stream 1 pipeline is the one which supplies the largest amount of gas to European Union. And of course, a very large part of it goes to Germany. But nevertheless, it is the main source of gas for the European Union from Russia. The other one is what comes through Ukraine. So that's always been there. But Nord Stream is really the major or the bulk supplier of the gas. So it's being temporarily shut down. It's not closed permanently. It's been temporarily shut down. This is all known, advertised well before for basically an annual maintenance which they do. So there is nothing new about it. This is what happens every year. The schedule was known a long time back. But the problem is not because this is a scheduled shutdown and everybody is unhappy. The European Union, Germany, every country has reserves. They store the reserves, and obviously that takes out short-term or even some long-term fluctuations depending on the level of reserve. So they have enough reserves for 10 days. So that's not a problem. They're probably reserved for much longer than 10 days. But the real problem is that given the uncertainty of the relationship with Russia and the fact that they have been threatening cutting off various things, that we will not take your coal, will not take your oil, we have given you 6 months after which we're going to phase out all energy products from you except gas. So this kind of tensions that the European Union has created in terms of sanctions on Russia, of course, means Russia is not at the moment a very or shall we say, Russians don't regard the Europeans and the European Union as very favorite players for themselves. So therefore, whether they will play hardball after 10 days and say, hey, we still haven't come back fully, we still have problems, so we're going to take another 5 days, maybe we'll take another week. So these are the fears that the European Union has, that given the fact that we are trying to play hardball, can Russia also play hardball? So that's really the underlying fear. The bigger issue, of course, for the European Union is that if the flow of gas from Russia to European Union is not maintained at the levels that they want, then there is a possibility that they will face really problems in winter, particularly when there won't be enough gas to even do the heating in homes, run electricity, and of course run the industry as well. So all of this is the larger issue of which is the backdrop of what's happening now. And of course, the long-term prices of gas are rising. So there is a lot of fear that as Europe faces this gas crunch, and also the threat of freezing oil supplies, etc., from Russia, which they all made by the end of the year is their target. So you are going to see an industrial problems for the German industry as well as other European industry, and also very high prices for the domestic domestic consumption. So that's going to hit Germany as well as other European countries very hard, both at the industrial level and at the level of everyday consumption. So this is really the backdrop of the Nord Stream 1 closure. There's a full-fledged Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which is idling because they have decided not to use it, because that's a part of the sanctions on Russia. So having built it, it's not being used. So otherwise, they would have had an alternative source of supply anyway.
And talking about what is going to be the impact, you also mentioned that there are fears that European leaders, they're warning that the supply might be cut off permanently. Is just a possibility or just a part of the Russian scare that's going on?
Well, the point is that if you are going to play hardball, both sides can play hardball. If you are going to seize their money and say all the foreign exchange I have of yours, which is your money, but I'll seize it. Now, whether I'll seize it and use it, give it to somebody else, that's not the issue. The question, it was not your money in the first place to seize. So having done that, then having imposed unilateral sanctions in what is essentially a market arrangement, then you, of course, leave yourself open. The other side say, okay, you want to put me under sanctions, you want to say I will do this and do that, but I also have the same leverage with you because I'm really selling to you in a market. So my right not to sell is as much as your right not to buy. Therefore, to say that not selling is somehow a crime internationally, while not buying is, of course, their sovereign right, makes really no market sense whatsoever, and makes no sense in international law terms. The bigger problem the Europeans have had created for themselves is, originally Russians had been asking them to do a fixed price contract, but for a longer period. Then, okay, for the next 5 years, this will be the price, stable contracts. The European Union and the European Union courts decided this is not right, and it should be a market-based arrangement. Every day there is a bidding, and that day decides the next day's amount as well as the price. Having laid yourself open to a non-long-term contract, but an everyday market situation, you also leave yourself open that I may decide tomorrow I'm not going to sell anything, because this has been left open. How much I will sell at what price and how much I will buy at what price. Both these issues have been left open. And therefore, for me not to bid that I will supply so much is also completely legit. So having created this market structure, for them now to say, no, not selling is blackmail. This, of course, is, what shall I say, it is politically or strategically all right for convincing your own population, but it doesn't really bear any strength of argument in the larger sense, which is international law and rules of the game. Ultimately, these are the rules of the game you set up. And if you did think that this would be a problem, you should have set up some ceiling and a roof or a floor that you have to sell at least this much at this price and at least this much at this price, something of that kind. None of that has been done. So having left themselves open, yes, it's in the hands of the seller as well as the buyer to decide how much to sell. And if how much to sell is zero, well, that's the condition that the market actually created.
And there is also the issue of turbine, which has created a diplomatic crisis between Ukraine and Canada. Could you tell us a little more about it?
Well, this is a four-way contest of who has created whose problem. This is a turbine which is a part of the Nord Stream 1 pumping system. Okay, so it's really an integral part of the Nord Stream 1 pumping system. And it went for an annual maintenance. It's a German turbine. Siemens is the owner of the turbine. It went to Canada for maintenance. That means it had some things to be fixed, some things to be done, and that was shipped to Canada. This is, of course, a part of the Nord Stream 1, which is a Russian pipeline. So already we have three parties involved. Ukraine is not a party to this because this pipeline runs under the Baltic Sea. So Ukraine is only saying Canada should follow sanctions. Okay. Now, Canadians originally said if this turbine is going into Nord Stream 1, which is a Russian-owned pipeline, therefore it comes under sanctions that Canada has imposed, and therefore we cannot ship the turbine back to Russia or to Germany. That was the original stand that Canada had taken. Germany had said, hey, we need the gas. And without that, we are going to be in deep trouble because already Russians had cut the supply to about 40%, saying that turbine is essential for our pumping system. And without that, our amount of gas we can pump is going to fall. So on that, after Germany approached Canada very nicely saying, please give us back our turbine, otherwise we are in trouble, Canada finally said, okay, we'll make a one-time exception, and has agreed to send the turbine back. I don't think it's still reached Germany, but it is supposed to reach Germany and of course go to the Nord Stream 1 pipeline, and therefore it has to be handed over to the Russians. Ukraine has said, you are weakening the sanctions. That is what they've told Canada. So Ukraine actually has no locus in all of this. So it's only saying, trying to put the, shall we say, emotional blackmail on Canada that you are helping the Russians and this is not in favor of the Ukrainian people. So this is not good. So that's how Ukraine comes into the picture. But the issue is really simple. It is a German turbine which was sent for repairs to Canada. It has to be sent back to Germany. And in that sense, where it's going to go after that, that's really not correct. Should not have been Canada's outlook. But nevertheless, there is a strong Ukrainian lobby in Canada itself, who obviously put some pressure on the Canadian government, say, let's sanction that. Let's not let it go back and let this be an issue with the Russians. But unfortunately for Germany and Europe, Nord Stream 1 pipeline is an issue for them as well. So that's really the larger picture.
Thank you so much, Prabir, for being with us on the show today. And finally, we go to France, where Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne survived a no-confidence vote brought against her by the left-wing NUPES alliance. 146 members of parliament voted in favour of the motion, whereas it needed 289 votes to pass. The vote's result was anticipated as the biggest opposition party, the far-right National Assembly, and the right-wing Republican Party had said that they would abstain. However, it's not a smooth way ahead for the Prime Minister and President Emmanuel Macron. We have with us Prashant for more. So Prashant, more or less this victory, this vote was anticipated, and what can we say about the balance of power in the French Parliament right now?
Right. So as we know, the Emmanuel Macron government, or his party's government, basically does not have a majority. So they are about 242 seats, I believe, and they need 289. And this basically means that they're at the mercy of the other right-wing parties in the parliament. That is, like you said, one is the National Rally, and one which is the far-right party led by Marine Le Pen, and one is the Republicans, who have about 64 votes or something. The National Rally, I believe, is close to 90, 89 or something. So basically, what this means is that this government has to go legislative action by legislative action. It basically has to play this tightrope game where it needs to make sure that at any point of time, either of these blocks is on their side or is willing to abstain. So or it has to, for instance, pass policies which the left-wing NUPES alliance proposes, and they have about 650 agenda items, which were the core for the alliance to come together. Now, it's very unlikely that Macron and Elisabeth Borne are going to pass those agenda items, and so what is more likely to happen is that we are going to see a compromise with the more right-wing sections, the far-right section, far right-wing National Rally, of course, and the Republicans, and pass the kind of reforms which will take France in a more rightward direction, in a more neoliberal direction, in the direction of more austerity policies, for instance. So Elizabeth Bourne, in her speech, of course, tried to some days ago tried to strike more of a balance, tried to play to the galleries, tried to say that we want everyone's policies, but in practice, what we are likely to see is a series of policies which although they'll try to put a humanitarian face on it, try to make it egalitarian in some senses, but in effect, what we're going to see is a series of policies which will intensify the right-wing nature of France's government, because it is these kind of policies that will win the support of these two right parties which the government needs to survive. So it's a very difficult time ahead for the people of France, because a lot of unpopular policies with the people might be pushed through, because those are the ones that will actually get the most amount of support in parliament from these right-wing blocs.
Okay, and Prashant, the Left Alliance is also facing some tough road ahead. What are its options right now?
So the issue, of course, with the left-wing alliances, while they are the biggest opposition bloc in parliament, they alone cannot block anything. Like what we saw in these elections, the no confidence vote, for instance, despite the fact that all these right-wing forces are very critical of of Macron and all that, when the time comes, they are always the quickest to they always abstain if the right kind of deals are struck. So there's going to be a lot of striking of deals in the background as we speak. But what the left-wing alliance at this point has the opportunity is that they have this series of policies which are which they came to a consensus on, and which a lot of people are interested in and agree with. So this provides them an opportunity to consistently hit on these policies, prove that the entire political system except them is against these policies, is not willing to accept these policies, and is actually moving in the opposite direction, and that they alone are the group which is actually willing to push these policies and willing to fight for them. So it is essential that there has to be a fair amount of good communication and coordination between the various members of this bloc, because it's not just, there are multiple parties there, including Jean-Luc Mélenchon's party, which is the leading party, of course. But these parties basically have to use this parliament in some senses as a kind of what is called a bully pulpit or something, where you consistently target the Macron government and the right-wing sections as a whole for failing to implement these policies which a lot of people agree with. For instance, the pension reforms, which the Republicans and the Macronists are very much agreed on, that is to raise the age of retirement. The left wing has been the most aggressive in refusing that, in denying that. And there also needs to be a close coordination between the parliamentary bloc in the left and the social movements outside if they want to make an impact, because it is this kind of coordination that will enable these forces to actually have more of an impact than the number of seats they have. So a very challenging time for left, but nonetheless there is an opening for them, because they did quite well in the parliamentary elections. But what they have to sort of now overcome is the fact that they are in some senses isolated, because the broad section of parliament is more towards the right. So how do you use such a situation to nonetheless push your agenda as a challenge before them?
Thank you for that update, Prashant. And that is all we have for today, folks. For more such stories and updates from around the globe, keep watching Daily Debrief and follow People's Dispatch on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram.